Mitch Spaulding.
Yeah,
He
it
fell ill
once.
this
Move the mouse stand. Wheel.
Yes, I think he had too good of a night last night. All right. So just real quickly, I always put in the disclaimer because I like being employed, pays the bills. My opinions today are my own. I'll try not to pick on too many cloud providers, although it's really hard not to. Tweets and Instagrams, if you want to follow me, feel free to. I don't care. You know, it's okay too. I probably offend someone almost every day on Twitter because I just find Twitter a basket of laughs. I won't talk about my employer as well, simply because, again, I enjoy employment. So, all right. This talk in general is going to start out fairly light, and then we're going to start getting into some more like deeper policy type stuff that you're going to run into when you start dealing with joy in the cloud. So, it's simple. The cloud is simply somebody else's hard drive. It's amazing how much people still think, especially when you go higher up into companies, you know, you have execs that you're working with, and they can't put two and two together. But it's as simple as explaining to them it's somebody else's hard drive. It really comes down to that. And really, why are we all doing it? We're doing it to save money. There's no other reason to do anything in the cloud. There's some convenience factors, which we'll talk about later on. We'll talk about some things. But those conveniences have trade-offs. The big thing you have to remember with anytime you're working with the cloud is that you're putting all your trust into a third party. Now, we'll get into some of the more interestingly fun details about those third parties, but that's really what you're doing. This is kind of one of my big sticking points when I start talking about the cloud. Security is sold softly. And I don't know, maybe we have a Microsoft person here, maybe an Amazon person, potentially. I doubt a Google. But in general, the cloud is sold softly, the security in the cloud. I can't tell you how many times like, oh, don't worry about the security. You guys are covered. Can't tell you how many times the Office 365 team tells me, oh yeah, Microsoft's got that covered. You guys have nothing to worry about over here. We're all fine, you're fine, I'm good. Nothing to worry about. So, just because some people in the room may not know as much about how kind of the pieces and parts fit together, let's talk through kind of a brief little overview. So there's IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. Okay? IaaS is infrastructure as a service. Think of it as your bare bones metal network with a computer on it, right? It's just in the cloud. You have to go in, do your VLANs yourself. You know, historically, when I think of this, I start to think of Amazon. They've kind of been that 10-year beast that's really done, you know, it's really led the industry for the most part. We think of PaaS, think of platform as a service. You just want to give an example to most people get is Microsoft SQL Server, proxy server in the cloud. It's basically where I go out there and I've kind of got my infrastructure already set up. And I just say, I want a SQL server for, you know, $10 a month or $4 a month. It's that easy. You can find proxy servers out there. You can also find virtual appliances. You can find all types of things out there. Amazon also does that too. There's a couple more examples. IBM does some. You know, Google App Engine. And then finally we get to SaaS. And this is really where you see things kind of break apart. You know, it's kind of funny, when Mitch and I were talking about this, we were talking about examples of SaaS. So his examples are Facebook, Instagram. They're more or less, you know, for people in social media, that is their, you know, that's their SaaS app. That's what they're worried about. For me, typically I think of like ServiceNow, Kronos, Office 365. You get into like treasury management stuff like Kyriba. You can go down the whole list of things. There's something like 10,000 well-known SaaS apps out there. Now, what is interesting, if you actually go out there, and this stat comes from SkyHigh. Now, again, this could be, you know, selling fear, but I actually do believe it's true. They estimate that within a typical company, moderate-sized business, you have between 600 to 1,000 SaaS apps. Okay. That to me is like 600 to 1,000 rogue IT groups or shadow IT groups. Okay, that's a lot of apps to try to manage. Ideally, in any environment right now, even the environment I'm in, we're trying to get it to less than 100. So we do definitely have the same issue. We're trying to resolve some stuff, but 100 would be great for us. Maybe in your organization it's 50, depending on the size of it. Maybe it's 10. So, we're going to talk about pizza as a service. You guys ever heard that? Okay, this example? All right. And trust me, I'm going to give the creds to the guy at the very end, Baron, because he's the one that kind of came up with this. I did try to add a little bit more fun to it. So we take a look at pizza as service, right? If I go ahead and cook my own pizza from scratch, that's just like having my own data center. I got to get my pepperoni, cheese sauce, toppings, right? I got to toss the pizza. I have to do that one in there. I got to toss the pizza up in there. We got the dough. We got to put some heat in the oven, electric and gas to power my house, and then finally the dining table to sit at, right? I got to take the next step over, and then, again, that's like cooking at home. I go to the next step over. I'm doing DiGiorno, right? I'm moving up in the world. This is getting classier. So they give me everything, which is basically a frozen pizza, and I got to go out there and I got to provide heat and an oven and gas and dining table. Not bad, not bad. That's kind of how infrastructure as a service works, right? They give me the bare bones of what I need to get going off the ground, and again, it's pizza. Finally, I get the delivered pizza. We get the Domino guy doing his wheelie here. That was the first thing for Domino's delivery that came up under Google Images. So, yes, that pizza is probably not going to taste all that great after he's done that, but it's very well tossed, a well-tossed pizza. But from a dining table perspective, it's just, they're doing everything, and I just throw it on my table, and kids eat it, right? And then finally, I get to the point where, I'm going out to Exquisite Dining, California Pizza Kitchen, or wherever, Giordano's, if you're from Chicago, Lou Malnati's. It just depends on where you're at, but you're going out. So when I go and I look at the cloud, same type of deal, right? My data center, I got to do everything. I go to infrastructure as a service. Pretty much the OS on up is going to be my problem. I got to protect it and do everything with it. When I move to platform as a service, Microsoft's going to manage that SQL server for me, okay? But the data and the applications is still going to be my problem to a certain degree. And then finally, I get to the end, I get to a SaaS app. I do have some shared responsibilities out there. Now, this is the one area that I disagree with most people, and I put these in pink. When I get to this level, everyone goes, well, that's still, this is the vendor's problem. It is and it isn't. Okay? And here's why. When we start getting into the vendor area, I still got to manage users. How do I do that? There's automated systems out there. We'll talk about some CASBs later on. Lots of different options for you that are available to you on how you want to do it. I still have to look at things like, user behavior monitoring. If I'm going to do some type of SIM, I still have SOX responsibilities. If this thing's handling financial apps, you get the regulatory stuff. It still amazes me how many salespeople will try to sell this as kind of like, oh, it's not as bad, because we'll do these other special things. And they'll try to tell you that, well, the rest of this meets SOX compliance. Unfortunately, that doesn't. You still got to manage it. You still have to go back out there and manage it. Over the last year, I've been working with SOX auditors, trying to work with them on a process to audit cloud applications, and it's been a bit of a challenge because of the fact that even the SaaS vendors will turn around and kind of push back on you, going, well, you really shouldn't have to do this. And we're like, yeah, but who's accountable for the user management? Well, you guys are. So we are accountable for knowing who's a legitimate user, who's not. Okay, well, guess what? That's SOX purview, it's our responsibility. So then we get down to technical tasks. Support, still the problem of the SaaS provider. All right. So we get into here, we're going to talk about a couple things, then we're going to start driving, this is kind of the exit of the introductory stuff, and then we're going to start driving into some more interesting topics here. But what do I need to have security, or really have, I think of e-commerce back in the day, right? I'm kind of dating myself, but to think about e-commerce, I have 5 things I need. Biggest thing is I need non-repudiation, right? I still need audit. I still need this within my cloud app. Because again, even if I'm out there doing Salesforce, I still need to be able to prove certain things. What else can I do out there? I can have a company modified PaaS and IaaS. I can also have hybrid. Hybrid is probably one of the first things that lots of companies will do is a baby step into it. And hybrid means that, I think a good example is Active Directory. I might have my 80 servers up in the cloud with Microsoft, and I might go ahead and have some 80 servers back here in my shop, which makes sense. And honestly, if you are going to do cloud stuff with AD, I don't see how you're not going to get away with at least having them in both locations. But we still have accountability. this is another area that's a huge topic for me that I always have to come back and argue with people about, and that is the business owner owns all this. They own this mess in the cloud, right? So if I look at something like Kyriba, which is treasury management in the cloud, the person who is in charge of the treasury department, like within my company or whatever company they work for, or accounting, they're the ones that are going to handle that. They handle that relationship. I'm not calling up Kyriba and going, hey, let's talk and let's, figure this out, figure that out. I'm usually going to be more of the technical owner and potentially the process owner. The process owner should be hopefully a mix of both business as well as technical. And you still have to have that relationship going on with the business, because at the end of the day, the business has to be educated to understand what they're agreeing to. Kyriba is a really interesting app because it does all your treasury management in the cloud. What makes it really interesting is that you can move, in companies, you can move millions of dollars. I mean, you could technically move $1 billion if you had $1 billion sitting inside your internal accounts. Okay? So have you guys ever heard of the scam where they email the CFO saying that they're from the CEO and they go, hey, listen, I want you to go ahead and pay this company, this random consulting company, $300,000 and do it right now because it's urgent. I gotta give them money quick. They're gonna leave and walk out and blah blah blah. It's a spoof email. That's where we can have problems when we start thinking about the cloud. So when you think about Kyriba, you can set up two-factor auth. I can also set up controls internally where it requires at least 2 signatures, including the CFO's, and over a certain amount, I'll turn around and say, hey, it's got to go up to the CEO if it's over, I don't know, $500,000, or maybe it's $100,000, whatever that limit is that you define. So we still have to have accountability in the cloud apps. And again, as I mentioned, two-factor authentication at a minimum, and I'll say it again later on, administrators should have two-factor auth. We'll talk about why, but you should. Business intelligence, I still want to pull metrics and I want to pull important data out of here. Encryption, obvious things I think that you guys understand here. We get into business requirements, rights management. Rights management is becoming a more and more hotter topic because of the fact that with rights management, I want to be able to manage my data in the cloud. When we think about things like Box and Dropbox, worst thing in the world you can do is share intellectual property out through your Box account and nobody's seeing it. Also, the ability to limit distribution. One of the biggest requests that I'm starting to see now with SaaS apps like Box and Dropbox, I want to be able to say that the file is only going to be out there for 90 days, or out there for 30 days. If you work with a procurement department, they may only say, hey, look, we got a fixed bid. The bid's good for 30 days. They have to submit within 30 days, and after 30 days, we want those files basically deleted. So I would put the files out there as read-only. Maybe they can only view them through Box, for example. They can't download them. Of course, they could do screenshots, which is possible. But again, I want to watch how I distribute these files out. The biggest stakeholders in this, whenever I start going to the cloud, legal, procurement, if I have a procurement department or a vendor management office, obviously information security, my architecture teams, my infrastructure teams. Especially when I start talking about SaaS, because usually SaaS, I don't really need a lot of developers. Now, if I am going to develop my own cloud apps, obviously the developers will be in here. I wanted to take a quick side note to talk about Minecraft as a service. This is a funny story. It's actually hilarious. Mitch was excited to tell you guys about this. So, Minecraft as a service, this joke kind of came about because of I have an 11-year-old son. Okay? Loves Minecraft. Basically, if you've never used Minecraft, it's digital Legos. My 11-year-old goes out on the cloud, sets up the Minecraft server, sets up everything, does everything. I was absolutely astounded. The only thing he had to ask me was for a credit card number, and I thought he was joining. I know, giving your then 10-year-old a credit card number is not a good idea. But I thought he was joining like some Minecraft group to go play Minecraft. I didn't realize he was setting up his own server. He basically didn't like the rules of these people. Okay? This is a 10-year-old. Didn't like the rules, so he just said, well, forget it. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to install my own Minecraft server online and do it in the cloud. He did everything. I didn't even find out about this until afterwards. I was astounded. I'm like, you did the IPing? Oh yeah, here's the IP address. I gave it to my friends. I told them this. I gave them their user accounts. I did provisioning. Of course, he doesn't say provisioning, but he's like, yeah, here's what I did. And he's like all proud. He showed me, and I'm like, it's amazing. I was like, just don't put any personal data out here in case it gets hacked. But otherwise, I'm just floored. So he's out there, and he's got maybe 10 friends on it. And all of a sudden, my 14-year-old steps into the scene. He's not very technical, but he's the kid who one day is going to be like that leading salesperson, okay? Because he's a salesman. That's what the 14-year-old really is. Deep down inside, he may not like me saying that, but he's a salesman. He basically figures out how he can make money. Because this is how the cloud works. The cloud's all really about money. So what he does is he manages to convince my now 11-year-old son's friends that it's $5 a month, and they need to give him $5 a month to play. So I'm paying, I think it was like $8 or $9 for this service in the cloud. My 14-year-old's collecting $40 a month, roughly. The 11-year-old finds out about the fact that the 14-year-old is collecting $40 a month and hasn't been sharing that. So we had the Minecraft war in my house one night. Anyhow, when we think about the cloud, you know, you can go back to your bosses and say, hey, listen, it's so easy, a 10-year-old can do it. It's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. That's what's so incredible when we start thinking about you know, cloud services. I can have a server spun up in, I think Amazon takes like 3 minutes. I got a server in 3 minutes. So easy, a 10-year-old can do it, and a 10-year-old, he went out and had to look online, he had to figure out how to, you know, IP addresses, how do I do that, what's the IP address, what's public, what's private, he had to figure out all the natting too. I was just like, did someone help you? He's like, no, he's like, I just pounded away on it, it took me like a month, but I figured it out. That's what he did for a month, because he didn't like the rules. And he basically wanted to be God on the machine. That's really what it came down to. He told me, he's like, I didn't like any of the rules, and then they banned me for a month. I can't handle that. So he get banned for a month, and you know, he moved on. So, multi-tenancy. How you make the cloud cheaper. Why does multi-tenancy matter to us when we think about the cloud? Let's just talk about just kind of briefly. What are we sticking in the cloud, right? When we think about the types of data that are going in the cloud these days, you have just about anything imaginable. You got everything from web servers out there to, you know, manufacturing machines are now collecting telematics in the cloud. So most of the manufacturing equipment that you see that's going out there, that's sending data up, it's throwing it out to the cloud. Okay? The multi-tenancy is really how we save money, or how the company who hosts it saves money. So Amazon, at the end of the day, sticks you out here, and they give you your, you know, hey, this is company A, this is company B. Maybe company C and D share some resources. I don't know. Maybe they have a partnership out there. You know, you think about somebody like GE Engines. They do lots of partnerships with people, or the aircraft manufacturers do lots of partnerships with people. So that's where I could go ahead and do these types of things out there. That's great. The way that we're making it cheaper is that we're sticking it in the cloud, and we're all sharing this. It's basically a timeshare, right? So has anybody ever bought into a timeshare and kind of had that bad taste in your mouth at the end of the day? Well, everything is going good as long as the provider is doing the one single thing that they are really tasked to do for security. That is to keep your data out of someone else's data. That is their security. Now, you can pay for additional services, which all require additional fees. You know, if you go to Amazon, it's additional fee for this, it's additional fee for that. But the most that they give you is port filtering. That's really it. They don't natively encrypt the OS. Now, they may say that the entire OS is encrypted for SOX reasons, but that's to cover their own butt. It's not to cover yours. Right? So multi-tenancy, it's really just to save money. Okay? So whenever I think about this, the greatest risk is just bleed over of data from my world to your world. Right? The only benefit is lower costs. But how can we mitigate that? We can isolate resources. So even within my tenant, what can I do? I can go ahead and say my database, I'm going to VLAN it off. I'm going to encrypt the data with my tools, not necessarily their tools, because again, I'm not trying to pick on Microsoft. I actually gave this originally at a Microsoft conference. That's kind of like customer feedback. And it made for some interesting results, because I was like, I wouldn't trust their stuff online that they supplied me. Not at all. It meets compliance. If I'm a small company, that's one thing. If I'm a Fortune 500, if I'm doing Department of Defense, I'm doing certain things, I'm going to probably not trust the native tools. Or at least I'll go through and do an examination to feel comfortable. Okay? I still get back to security as a foundation. When I think of security as a foundation, I think of doing basic things, right? Knowing who my users are, breaking apart my network, taking things as simple as possible. Usually what I find is that most people don't fail on the technology, they fail on the process. Right? They do a bad job of managing their users. They do a bad job of VLANing. They forget basic steps. Huge advocate for checklists. So, when we think about, APIs, the big cloud hacks that happen, the ones that you go, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened, usually happen through APIs. And here's the reason why. Very little testing actually happens on most cloud APIs. Or people build their own custom APIs, and they don't do any security testing on the APIs. Okay? The big example is actually down here, and I believe they're out of Orlando. And I'm trying to remember what the name of their company was. It was like 3 years ago. In a nutshell, somebody hacked in through an administrative account and deleted all their backups, or they didn't have any backups. I don't know, whichever the case was. I think it was like SoftCloud or something, or SoftPlayer. Anyway, you can look it up on your phone. It's like 2013. But they basically hack into the environment, and they then start to ransom it back to them. Well, they then, the bad guys start to figure out that the good guys, the company, is trying to essentially regain and establish themselves back into the account, and so they then go ahead and delete it. They lost everything. So when we think about backups, right, we think about some basic things that we can do. Understand something, that when they say they have no backup in the cloud, they mean they have no backup in the cloud. You delete your Amazon backup, sorry. You delete your Microsoft backup, we're really sorry. There is no backup unless you specify and you pay for it. If you're hoping that they have a backup, again, we're sorry. I've been in that place, actually I've been in that place in the last 2 weeks. It was a very uncomfortable conversation explaining to some people that they really don't have a backup. Well, can you ask, Microsoft for another backup? I'm like, I'll ask them. I was like, but I'm telling you to be emotionally prepared for the fact they do not have a backup. So when we think about APIs, think about the fact that you do have insecure APIs out there. You should test them. You do have known vulnerabilities against some of these. And you really don't have a whole lot of control because it's the vendors' APIs. I think about SaaS apps. I think about like LinkedIn, for example. LinkedIn about 5 years ago had an API issue. And you could go in and actually hack people's LinkedIn accounts. The benefit of the API is obviously I get customizable services. I can integrate with my internal systems. Probably one of the more interesting APIs, in my opinion, because I'm just a dork, is ServiceNow. I like ServiceNow. It makes things easier. It makes me get my job done faster. Help my team get their job done faster. So when I think about that, there are some really good benefits, but I definitely want to check that out. And whenever I develop my own custom API, whether I have an internal team that can do the testing, or I have an external team that can do the testing, bring somebody in with another set of eyes to look at your developer's code. Because this is probably the #1 way of getting in. Think about it. I've got a service account that's probably running as root. What could go wrong, right? So, when we think about mitigation strategies, look at your strengths, features. Again, we get back to security as a foundation. Go back and do the basics. So, portability. What's nice about portability? Here's a perfect example. And this is still a kind of a data center world one, but after 9/11, or right on 9/11, Morgan Stanley, they were located, I believe it was North Tower. CIO is basically, along with everyone else, scurrying down the stairwells, going down. He's on a cell phone. He's saying, do me a favor, flip everything from the tower over to Jersey City right now, immediately. Flip it. They flipped it, and when they, back then you did a flip, it would take like a couple hours, or, like a day. These days, portability, I can flip things in literally a matter of minutes. So let's say I'm using Amazon, for example. Amazon has, data centers in Portland, or at least in Oregon. Virginia, they got one now by me in Ohio, which is great. It's really convenient. But the good thing about this is if I don't like something, I flip it. Let's say I have certain reasons I have to put it over in Europe. I can take my data and flip it over to Europe. And when I go to move my data, it's done usually within, I think the longest I've ever had is 30 minutes with Amazon. Microsoft's pretty much right along the same lines for the most part. IBM's a little bit slower. I'm not trying to pick on that IBM. You might work for them. I apologize, but it's my own experience. When we start looking at IBM, we start looking at trying to do a flip. It takes a little longer for some reason. Don't know why. But compared to the way it was, 15, 17, 18, 20 years ago, doing a flip's a much easier task. And even then, doing a data center flip in a day was considered a miracle. So, what are the benefits of this? Really, business continuity, disaster recovery. Why do I want to have that? Simply because of the fact that bad things happen, right? What if somebody gets into the Amazon data center and destroys all the data, it gets hit by a tornado, these types of things happen, right? So I might want to have, a copy of my data out on the West Coast, I might want to have my copy of my data on the East Coast, I'll make my East Coast the primary, and then it just replicates back to the West Coast. Data portability is awesome. It's probably one of the biggest benefits of the cloud. But again, I do have to remember the fact that I can't get myself locked in with a vendor, so I want to be able to, set my apps up and set my equipment up and even understand what would I do if I decided to leave Microsoft or leave IBM. We're done in 10 minutes. All right, we're going to hustle. So I've got to figure out how I'm going to do that. What can I do? Develop my BCP, my business continuity plan. It sounds so simple, I know. It's like, oh, well, that's just easy. Well, here's the problem is, it sounds easy, but if you really start looking at it in the cloud, I've got a couple more variables to throw in. And most of the time, your disaster recovery people, they're not as technical, or at least may not be as technical in most organizations. Yours might, but in general, they're not as technical, I've found. You also want to develop your exit strategy. What does that mean? Figure out how I would get my data out of Amazon if I needed to. Figure out how to get my data out of Microsoft if I needed to. Figure out and have your plan kind of ahead of time before you stick all your data in the cloud. We think about risk when it comes to cloud reliability, denial of service. That's probably our biggest one right here. We also figured out skills atrophy. Guess what happens when I start sticking everything in the cloud? I don't need as many administrators. Guess what happens then? If I don't have as many administrators, and I decide to pull it all back in, guess who I got to go hire? All those people I just let go that were administrators. Does anybody see why this could be a problem? So, you might want to make sure that you at least have a certain set of skill sets that are still available, especially when you talk about SaaS apps and you start talking about the fact that, hey, I don't need anything. I don't need DBAs. I don't know. Salesforce does it all. I'll have skills atrophy, right? We think about other things with reliability. I do have to pay for that reliability. If I want certain levels of reliability with Amazon, I'm paying for it. Again, this is where I start to get back to, I may not be saving as much money. What I'm really getting out of this is convenience and I'm getting speed because they can do things automatically, in a matter of minutes where it might take my team a day to do something. Or in some places, 2 months to get a server built. It just depends on where you're at, right? How do I mitigate this? Maybe use the hybrid cloud option, bring it in, leave a little outside, keep copies. Also, documentation is critical. I'll want to document the heck out of it. Okay? Make sure I've got a lot of these. When I think about portability and reliability, you should do that before you stick your stuff in the cloud. I can't tell you how often I find that developers already got the stuff in the cloud, and then, oops, we had a problem. Data encryption. I'm not going to tell you guys the merits of doing encrypting your data in the cloud, because you guys already should know that about encrypting it if it's on your own local network, right? Here's the thing I would tell you about the cloud. The worst thing possible in the cloud for encryption is that you can't touch your own data. That has happened to people before. It hasn't happened to me, thankfully, but understand something. It happens. So people will turn around and they'll set up this really fancy key management system, and then guess what they do? They lose the keys. They can't get their own data out. So now they're trying to figure out backward ways of pulling their own data out of the cloud. It's very pivotal to understand that when we start encrypting data in the cloud, we've got to be able to manage our keys. If you're not comfortable managing keys, then you should probably look at some third-party system and, again, test the heck out of it, look at a couple different options, see what you're most comfortable with. Develop that data security strategy or data access strategy. Okay? Develop that ahead of time. How am I going to pull my data out? I want to look at how I'm going to do encryption in the cloud. How am I going to manage those keys? Okay? So CASBs. We could have an entire talk on just CASBs. What do the CASBs bring to the table? The Sky Highs, the Netscopes. They're coming out. Even ServiceNow offers a whole CASB kind of portion for vulnerability management and for doing a bunch of different things that they can automate in your world and integrate with service tickets, right? But we think about CASBs. the risk here, I often see they're improperly positioned. Hey, can your CASB go ahead and do Amazon auditing? Nope. That's what they should be telling me, but you know what they'll say? Well, there's certain things we can do at Amazon. Just write me a check here and I'll show you how it works. Right? Be careful when you start looking at CASBs. Understand completely what you're signing for. Because I've seen people at the C-level sign for, well, we just got this thing. They said they'll take care of Microsoft and Azure, and you guys don't have anything to worry about anymore. Wait a second, Chief. You basically just paid for a service that's going to help us with Salesforce and stuff. It's not going to help us a bit for Azure or Amazon. But the sales rep said it would. Okay, so we're going to go back and we're going to have to buy more stuff now. And yeah, we'll take your other stuff and use it, but guess what? I've had that happen to me before as well. Be careful with skills atrophy too, proprietary tooling. What you'll find is that, again, you're going to lose certain skill sets. If I basically take the CASB and throw it out on the cloud, and I don't have people to do some of the basics around the office, if I lose that service, or it comes to a screeching halt, or the company goes out of business, which happens, I may be scrambling yet again. Especially if I got something that's tied back to like SOX or, you know, insert whatever regulatory NERC thing you've got to deal with. Benefits here. Allows me to get in the cloud faster, gives me a little bit of a security sense. Probably one of the bigger examples you can even go back with is, I look at like SaaS apps, I can have a single provider for multiple vendors. So I can have a single provider to help me with a bunch of different things. That's a convenience, it's nice. Again, we get back to security auditing. Security is a foundation, knowing what I'm buying and knowing what I'm getting myself into. So traditional security migrated to the cloud. Here's the risk that I see commonly when it comes to this issue. False sense of security. Okay? The problem about the false sense of security is this. A lot of people say, well, I don't need a firewall in the cloud because, you know, Microsoft's giving me a firewall. They're doing port filtering. Here's what I would have to say. Most people who are in the cloud are doing web apps or a web application portion of some sort. Right? If all you're looking at is port filtering to manage the protection of your file or of your app, you should go back to 2005. Even earlier, 2002, 2001. Right? These days, you'll probably want a decent web application firewall out there, which means that you've got to go get a virtual appliance from some vendor to hopefully protect your web apps. Okay? Do a little bit more. Unless you're going to sit out there and you're going to build your own custom, rules, look for SQL injection and cross-site server scripting or something like that, you're probably going to have to go look at what else can I do out there. Can I at least put in like a reverse proxy? Telling someone that the firewall is all set by saying I only let port 80 to it. I actually could talk about another incident that happened in the last week where somebody didn't have. They actually did the opposite. They did all the opposite ports, so all the other ports were open. It's been a crazy week for me, last 2 weeks, where somebody actually reversed the firewall rules because they got confused. And nobody knew. So these things happen, right? So your ability to understand and visualize security posture, we still get back to the fact that, we talk about the old timers and the fact, well, we don't need sysadmins, I don't need firewall admins. That's a load of BS. I still need them because you're still going to have certain things like that out in the cloud, okay? I get back to security fundamentals. I get back to knowing basics of firewalls and basics of security. We're almost there. One of the other big things that you have to consider when you're going out in the cloud is international data. So, let's say I've got European data sitting on my US server, right? Whose laws do I have to comply with? I got EU laws I got to think about, right? Got EU laws, okay. We also have certain things that says, like German data must stay on German services within German borders. So before I even go, let's say I don't know, I do a lot of work with Volkswagen. They have a lot of German citizen data in it. Before I go and I just set up that server over at Amazon's facility in Virginia, I might want to make sure that they got a German server available. What I may find is that they've got a German server available at a higher cost that I've got to move some data to, or Microsoft would have a specific German server that might be perfect for everything. So I want to look at these factors as I start looking at where my data is. So I've got to understand what my data is, who's in it, what are they going to do with it. Okay? We get back to basically doing what amounts to a privacy impact assessment, a PIA. You've got to look at how your data is going to be used. People don't even realize that oftentimes you can get away with certain safe harbor rules with Canadian servers. Again, if you can get certain compliance to be met, you can actually use Canadian servers for EU data. So you may want to think about moving some data potentially to Canada. But you've got to address the whole international thing, the privacy thing. When you go overseas, it's a huge stink. It's not a good thing. Has anyone ever been audited by an EU privacy commissioner? It's a horrible experience. It's especially if you're an American. So, one of the last slides. Here's the big thing to remember. Your data is your data. Is the cloud provider going to care about the fact that you got hacked? They might feel sad for you because they might think of lost revenues. Heck, if they get hacked, what are they going to do? They're only going to give you a portion of the money back that you paid. They're not going to say, oh, let me go ahead and take care of all your pain and your problems. Hopefully you've got cyber insurance for that, is what they're going to tell you. Right? But we'll give you the remaining balance of your money back that you had spent with us. And, hey, it's like mattress, right? It's got a 3-year warranty, except that you brought it in on the last month, so we'll give you your $50 back. Thank you. So you'll only get that little piece back. It's a shared service. Again, think of a timeshare, right? If you and 4 or 5 other people are making a claim towards that timeshare house here in, I don't know, maybe down in Bradenton that you've got going on, are you going to be able to take like the lamps? I mean, how do you break it apart? Worst case scenario, the company's going to just wipe your hands of it, walk away. And you're the one that's left screwed. Okay? Can't tell you how you see businesses go out of business all the time. If you've ever worked with a software vendor who went out of business, they just walk away. They go, I'm sorry. Same thing with the cloud. So keep that in mind as you're doing your business dealings with them. I've worked with lawyers who thought they had the ability to take the cloud provider and go like this. But you know who we are? We're so big that they have to do what we want. They just laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed and said, hey, listen, here's the most that we can give you. After this, insure it. It's not our problem. I remember they were trying to push Box around, and it was just amazing because Box was like, dude, we wouldn't even be able to do this if we actually had to pay people back if we ever got breached to that level. There's no way we'd be able to do this. And so here's the most that we can do. Here's your sliver of what you get back. Go insure it. And the lawyers are just like, wow, man, these guys play hardball. No, it's because they have nothing to give you. They honestly do. They do not have a thing to give you if they get hacked. So your data is your problem. It's your responsibility. If you don't protect it, don't go crying to the cloud providers. They're not going to help you. So we think about where do we go from here. Everything's moving to the cloud. When I say everything, it's amazing. Almost everything's moving to the cloud. They expect that in 2025, a typical car will send 4 terabytes of data. That's one car to the cloud every day. They don't even have a way to store that data today. But yet they expect that by 2025, every single car manufactured in the U.S. that year will send 4 terabytes of data up to the cloud. It's a huge amount of data. It's staggering, right? So don't fight the Kool-Aid. It's coming. You got to just accept it and understand that the cloud's coming and it's here to stay. Containerization, portability, it's kind of that next big wave. You see it happening, I see it in like smaller companies, you see it happening in certain, DevOps environments within certain companies where they have this little splinter of DevOps teams. They're using Chef and Puppet and what have you. And they're out there working with Docker and they're doing all these cool stuff. Containerization is coming, right? There's some really good talks out there on that. I don't want to go too far into it. You also haven't seen the next big killer SaaS app. It hasn't come yet. Everybody tries to think, well, maybe it was Office 365. No, Office 365 is just doing mail. We kind of think about what happened back in the day. Facebook kind of led that change. I mean, even think about Box. Box is a great example. The example that I give to people about Box is this. Who would have thought that you could take something as simple as FTP and turn it into a service so that it was so easy that my mother could do it? I mean, it sounds a bit harsh, but my mom is not the most technical person. There's a reason why I bought her a laptop with a support contract. I'm dead serious, I did. I did it for my brother and my sister, too, but I didn't want phone calls. So they called them. The line at Christmas was really horrible. Hey, can you fix my computer? Hey, can you fix my computer? So, we haven't really seen it yet. It's coming. When it comes, we'll probably be in for a huge surprise. Automation's already hitting the cloud, so you're seeing more and more of that hitting it, whether you're using Ansible or whatever you've got going on in the cloud. And machine learning is going to take the cloud by storm. It's going to become easier and easier. Basically, that's what Mitch is working on right now. He's working on machine learning for a SIM in the cloud. So, Big thing you want to ask your company that you're going to go do cloud services with. Where does your security end and my security begin? I'll tell you my quick story, and that is this. Amazon was pretty good about telling me this. I still don't have a Microsoft answer yet. I've been asking them for a year and a half, almost 2 years. Where does my security have to begin? Can you just tell me, give me the specifics. What do I have to do? Well, let me have you read our privacy policy. I'm serious. We asked them to bid on a contract, and we said, we're trying to do a decision matrix, and what's your response to using this type of technology? Let me send you a 40-page PowerPoint deck. Nobody ever answered my questions. And they wondered, like, why do we score so low in your decision matrix? Why isn't OneDrive for Business one of the best things you've ever seen? Maybe because your responses were 40-page documents. You never said yes or no. Or you never said, here's how it works within a paragraph. I wasn't looking for a dissertation on how Microsoft privacy works. That's the question you want to ask them. I'll give you Mitch's spiel right here. If you want to visit him, he's out online. He's going to talk about, in April, hacking the millennial, which is actually going to be about how he circumvents his parents to get around security that his parents have put in place. Because, you know, when you're in security, you have things like, you know, OpenDLP at home, stuff like that. And he's going to explain, like, basically how he managed before to sneak off to see his girlfriend, turned off tracking on a vehicle, did everything that he could to at least throw everything off, and how easy it was. And his whole talk's basically about the fact that he's no different than these typical kids coming out of college. So if you manage millennials or you're hiring millennials, understand that that's kind of what that's the mindset that you're bringing on. They're all little mini hackers. He is looking for a job in Cincinnati in June. So if you live in Cincinnati or know someone in Cincinnati, he's looking for a junior analyst role. I do want to thank a couple people, John Sanders on the CIO side for talking about gave me a lot of good ideas on the cloud stuff and bouncing off him. Secure ideas for some, if you ever want to go to a decent training on Amazon security without going to Amazon. And then Albert Barron for Pizza as a Service. So I can't take credit for that novel idea, that's his. And then there's mine. I do want to say I'm starting a little business, we'll see how it goes. It's actually going pretty well for something that we threw together a month ago. And it's just amazing how people are coming out with work. So same deal, I want to thank those same people. My talk in April is called Looking for Love in All the Wrong Places, which is basically about how people recruit poorly. I want an iPhone developer who's been working on the iPhone for the last 10 years. Good luck with that, buddy. So I hope you guys enjoyed the talk. If you have any questions you want to ask afterwards, please. Questions though, just feel free. I'm going to be here for the next 2 hours. I'm just going to check on Mitch and make sure that he's not any sicker than he already is. He actually has the flu.